We all remember the adrenaline rush, the explosions, the bone-breaking stunts, the moments where the hero walks away from a car crash without a scratch. Action movies are built on illusions of danger, but what if some of those dangers weren't illusions at all? Behind the lens, beyond the smoke machines and safety wires, lies a truth that Hollywood often tries to bury. A truth where the actor doesn't walk away, where the scream isn't part of the script, where the blood isn't fake. In an industry obsessed with realism, there comes a point when make-believe isn't enough. Directors demand more, studios push harder, and some actors, either out of pride, pressure, or sheer madness, step beyond the line that separates performance from peril. The result? Careers nearly cut short, lives forever changed, and footage stained with real pain. This isn't about stuntmen or body doubles. This is about A-list stars, Oscar winners, box office kings, international legends who stared death in the face for the perfect shot. Sometimes they volunteered, sometimes they were manipulated. But in every case, the camera kept rolling. What does it take to create a real action moment? And how close did these stars come to never seeing their film premiere? Let's step beyond the velvet curtain and dive into 15 action movies where the price of authenticity was nearly fatal, stories of broken bones, halted heartbeats, and scenes so dangerous they should have never happened. Fact 1. Tom Cruise. Mission Impossible. Fallout 2018. He sprinted, jumped, and didn't land right. Then he got up and finished the shot with a broken ankle. In Mission Impossible. Fallout, Tom Cruise's relentless commitment to doing his own stunts pushed his body to its limit. The scene was simple on paper. Ethan Hunt runs across a rooftop, leaps to another building, and pulls himself up. But this wasn't CGI, and it wasn't a green screen. During the London shoot, Cruise leapt from one building to another. He missed the landing, slammed into the wall, and shattered his ankle on impact. The pain was immediate. You can actually see him limp away in the final cut because that's the footage they used. After all, the injury was real. Production halted. Insurance agents panicked. Studios calculated losses. Cruise, however, returned to the set in record time 6 weeks ahead of schedule. He did it not for ego, but because he saw the injury as part of the role. Ironically, that painful leap became one of the most talked about moments in the entire franchise, not because of special effects, but because it was too real to ignore. And Cruise wasn't alone in this madness. In fact, there's a legendary action star whose entire career was built on pushing past pain. Fakt 2. Jackie Chan. Project A. 1983. Imagine falling from a clock tower 3 times because the first 2 takes didn't look painful enough. Jackie Chan isn't just an action star, he's a category of danger unto himself. In Project A, a pirate-era martial arts film, he attempted what would become one of the most terrifying stunts in cinema history, a fall from a giant clock tower, echoing the silent films of Buster Keaton. There was no CGI, no padding, no wire work, just Chan, a building, and gravity. He fell from the top, crashed through 2 awnings, and slammed into the ground. On the first take, he landed wrong and severely injured his neck and spine. Instead of scrapping the scene, he did it again, then again. The final cut uses the 3rd take because Chan thought it was the most cinematic. Behind the scenes, crew members refused to watch. The fall was so traumatic that even seasoned stuntmen called it reckless. Years later, Chan admitted he has permanent spinal issues from that scene. And yet, it's now celebrated as a milestone in action choreography. But what happens when a punch isn't just well acted but full force to the chest? That's where our next story hits even harder. Fact 3. Sylvester Stallone, Rocky IV, 1985. He told his co-star to hit him as hard as possible. The result? A trip to the ICU. During the filming of Rocky IV, Sylvester Stallone wanted authenticity. He didn't want stage punches, he wanted pain. So he told Dolph Lundgren, who played the towering Ivan Drago, to stop pulling punches and hit him for real. Lundgren obligered. In a brutal sequence filmed in Las Vegas, Lundgren delivered a punch straight to Stallone's chest. Stallone collapsed hours later. Doctors diagnosed him with a swollen heart and internal bleeding. He was flown to intensive care and spent several days recovering. His heart had literally slammed against his ribs from the force of the blow. The irony? That punch didn't even make it into the final cut the way Stallone wanted. The realism he chased almost killed the franchise's star. Stallone would later joke, "Dolph was just being Dolph." But the truth is, the fight choreography crossed a line. Between method acting and masochism, that line got blurry. And if you think that's wild, wait until a car chase turns into a life-or-death plunge underwater. Fact 4. Jason Statham. The Expendables 3, 2014. It was supposed to be a routine stunt: drive a truck, hit the brakes, cut to explosion. But the brakes failed. During the filming of The Expendables 3, Jason Statham was behind the wheel of a 3-ton military truck. The scene called for a sharp brake near the dockside to simulate tension. But there was a crucial oversight. The brakes weren't connected. As cameras rolled, the truck didn't stop. It plunged straight off the dock and into the Black Sea. In real time, the crew watched as Statham, strapped in and sinking fast, disappeared underwater. What most people don't know is that Jason Statham is a former Olympic-level diver. That background likely saved his life. He managed to unbuckle himself, break out of the submerged vehicle, and swim to the surface before divers could even reach him. The production was nearly shut down. The studio quietly removed much of the footage, and yet, the scene remains one of the film's most infamous moments, not for what's on screen, but for what almost wasn't. And just when you think action movies are safe for non-physical roles, one actress nearly drowned in a magic trick gone wrong. Fact 5. Isla Fisher. Now You See Me, 2013. She was chained in a tank of water, acting like she was drowning, and then she actually was. In Now You See Me, Isla Fisher plays a magician performing an escape act in front of a live audience. The illusion: chained, submerged, and on the clock. The reality: no stunt double, no quick-release locks, and a life-threatening mistake. During filming, Fisher was trapped. One of the chains snagged. She was supposed to have a safety button, but it failed. The crew assumed she was giving a great performance as she thrashed underwater until they noticed she wasn't acting anymore. She was stuck underwater for nearly 3 minutes before safety divers intervened. After the incident, Fisher downplayed it in interviews, joking that it added to the realism. But those on set admitted it was a near-miss one that could have turned a mid-budget thriller into a headline tragedy. And if drowning wasn't terrifying enough, wait until you hear about the man who was actually hanged during a rehearsal. Fact 6. Brendan Fraser, The Mummy, 1999. He was pretending to be executed. For a few horrifying seconds, it wasn't pretend. In The Mummy, Brendan Fraser's character is sentenced to hang. The stunt required a rope, a drop, and a quick catch to simulate choking. But something went wrong. The harness slipped, the tension was misjudged, and Fraser's feet left the box. He was actually hanged. Within seconds, he lost consciousness. The crew thought he was method acting until he went limp. Emergency medics were called. Fraser survived, but barely. The bruising on his neck was real. His voice was strained for weeks. The production was delayed. Years later, Fraser spoke candidly about the trauma. He said it was the beginning of a downward spiral, one that led to years of pain, both physical and emotional. That stunt was supposed to elevate the film's realism. Instead, it almost buried its lead. But injuries don't always come from rope or water. Sometimes, a single kick can snap bones, and the actor just keeps rolling. Fact 7. Viggo Mortensen, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, 2002. A war cry, a furious kick, and the sound of real bone breaking. In one scene from The Two Towers, Aragorn believes his friends are dead. He drops to his knees and screams in anguish after kicking an orc's helmet across a field. What audiences didn't know is that Viggo Mortensen broke 2 of his toes in that very moment. The pain was immediate and blinding, but instead of breaking character, Mortensen channeled it. He screamed in agony, an authentic howl of both grief and physical trauma. Director Peter Jackson kept the take. That raw intensity? It wasn't acting. Mortensen would later joke that it was a method moment. But behind the scenes, the injury caused concern. Crew members advised cutting down his fight sequences. Mortensen refused. He continued to do many of his own stunts, limping off set between takes. The twist? That scream of pain became one of the most iconic character moments in the trilogy, anchored not in fantasy, but in fractured bones. And speaking of legends who blur the line between performance and peril, one actress threw herself from a moving train for the sake of a single shot. Fact 8. Michelle Yeoh, Police Story 3, Supercop 1992. No wires, no doubles. Just a motorcycle, a train, and a death wish. In Supercop, Michelle Yeoh performed a stunt that would make even seasoned daredevils flinch. The scene required her to ride a motorcycle off a ramp onto a moving train. Timing had to be perfect. The consequences of failure? Catastrophic. She misjudged the launch on the first take. Instead of landing on the flatbed, she slammed onto the side, nearly falling off the edge. Jackie Chan, watching from another car, sprinted toward her, convinced she'd gone under the wheels. Miraculously, she survived with bruises and a sprained shoulder. Yeoh later admitted she had no prior motorcycle experience before filming, But when asked if she would do it again, she said yes because she didn't want to be known as the actress who flinched. The shot made the final cut and remains one of the most insane stunts ever performed by a female lead. No wires, no green screen, just commitment. And sometimes, commitment means bleeding on camera and just rolling with it. Fact 9. Leonardo DiCaprio, Django Unchained, 2012. He slammed his hand on a table and the glass shattered, cutting deep. He didn't stop. In Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained, DiCaprio plays the despicable Calvin Candy, a man who explodes with cruelty. During one heated dinner scene, DiCaprio slams his hand on the table in fury. The glass beneath his palm breaks, slicing his hand wide open. But instead of breaking character, he kept going. Blood streamed down his hand as he delivered the rest of his monologue. He even smeared the blood onto Kerry Washington's face, unscripted, shocking, and utterly in character. The cast was horrified. Tarantino, knowing what he had, let the camera roll. That take made it into the final cut. And the blood? 100% real. Later, DiCaprio required stitches. When asked why he didn't stop, he simply said, "It was too good to ruin." What happens when actors ignore pain to chase perfection? Sometimes, they walk away with glory. Other times, they leave the set in an ambulance. Fact 10. Halle Berry, The Call, 2013. She slammed into the concrete floor and didn't get up. In The Call, Halle Berry plays a 911 operator racing against time to save a kidnapped girl. The role was emotionally exhausting, but it was a physical moment that nearly took her out for good. While shooting a violent scuffle scene, Berry's head struck the floor with brutal force. The sound wasn't a sound effect, it was her skull. For several seconds, she lay motionless. The crew rushed in. She was unconscious, her body limp. Production halted. Paramedics were called. The Oscar-winning actress was rushed to the hospital. The injury was diagnosed as a minor concussion, but insiders later revealed that it could have been far worse. The scene was finished using another take, but the accident haunted the set. One misstep had nearly ended the production entirely. Berry has a long history of on-set injuries, but this one, hidden behind a low-budget thriller, remains one of her closest brushes with catastrophe. And she's not alone. Another Hollywood icon nearly met his end during a scene that audiences barely remember, but his body never forgot. ACT 11. Michael J. Fox. Back to the Future Part 3, 1990. The scene called for simulated strangulation. For a few harrowing seconds, it wasn't simulated. In Back to the Future Part 3, Michael J. Fox's character, Marty McFly, is lynched by an angry mob. The original plan: suspend Fox with a hidden support under his body. But during one take, that support failed and the rope took full weight. Fox's hands went limp, his legs kicked once, then stopped. The crew thought he was selling the scene brilliantly until they realized he was actually choking. Fox later described the moment as a blur of fading light and darkness. He lost consciousness before the stunt coordinator intervened. The worst part? That take was nearly used in the final cut because it looked so convincingly real. In the end, cooler heads prevailed. The moment is rarely mentioned in retrospectives, but behind the lighthearted franchise was a stunt that nearly turned fatal. And when it comes to actresses risking it all for an action role, one woman walked away from a near-fatal spinal injury just to keep the cameras rolling. Fact 12. Charlize Theron, Aeon Flux, 2005. One twist of the neck, and she could have been paralyzed for life. In Aeon Flux, Charlize Theron transformed herself into a deadly, acrobatic assassin. The film demanded complex choreography and gymnastic stunts. During one such maneuver, a backflip landing into a roll, something went terribly wrong. Theron landed awkwardly, snapping her head backward. She felt a crack. Production stopped. Medical staff confirmed the worst. She had slipped 2 cervical discs. If her landing had been even slightly worse, she might have fractured her spine. Paralysis was a very real possibility. Filming was shut down for nearly 2 months. Theron wore a neck brace in secret, and the studio quietly removed several action-heavy sequences from the script. In interviews, she downplayed the injury, but sources say it nearly ended her career. The irony? The film flopped. Few remember the movie, but the price she paid was all too real. And speaking of legends, some injuries aren't just physical. They're covered up, hidden, and denied, until a door fell and a franchise icon was left in the rubble. Fact 13. Harrison Ford, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, 2015. The Millennium Falcon wasn't supposed to fight back. On the set of The Force Awakens, Harrison Ford reprised his iconic role as Han Solo, a move celebrated by fans across the galaxy. But on day one of filming, nostalgia turned into nightmare. While rehearsing inside the Falcon's set, A hydraulic door built to simulate the ship's futuristic entryway malfunctioned. It came crashing down with industrial force, pinning Ford's leg and crushing it. The injury was severe, a broken tibia and fibula, requiring surgery and months of recovery. Production paused. Insurance agents circled. Disney panicked. Later, it was revealed that had the door struck just inches higher, it could have crushed Ford's pelvis or even killed him on impact. The British studio was fined for violating health and safety codes. But Ford, he returned, limping slightly, and finished the film. Han Solo didn't go down that day, but Harrison Ford nearly did. Some actors survive by chance. Others survive by defiance. And in one infamous case, an actress was pushed past her limits on purpose. Fact 14. Uma Thurman, Kill Bill, Volume 2, 204. She begged not to drive. Tarantino insisted. The crash nearly ended her career. While filming the final stretch of Kill Bill, Volume 2, director Quentin Tarantino pressured Uma Thurman into performing a driving scene on a dirt road, despite her concerns about the car's condition. The vehicle was faulty, the seatbelt unreliable, and the road barely stable. Moments into the take, Thurman lost control. The car slammed into a tree. Her neck snapped violently. She was concussed, with permanent damage to her knees and spine. For years, the footage was hidden. Thurman later revealed that she had to fight Miramax for access to the video, only receiving it after going public. The footage, once released, is chilling. She slumps in the seat, disoriented, barely conscious. This wasn't a stunt gone wrong. It was a choice forced on an actor, a calculated risk from a director, and a cost she still carried. But sometimes, the danger doesn't strike during explosions or chases. Sometimes, it's a quiet island, a wound, an infection, and a star left alone with pain no one saw coming. Fact 15. Tom Hanks, Cast Away, 2000. He survived the island, but it nearly killed him for real. During the grueling shoot for Cast Away, Tom Hanks transformed his body, losing over 50 pounds, isolating himself, and shooting for weeks in Fiji. But it wasn't the acting that almost ended him. It was a cut. A minor wound on his leg became infected. Hanks ignored it, assuming it was part of the discomfort he was meant to endure. Days passed. Fever crept in. The pain sharpened. When he finally returned to the mainland, a doctor diagnosed him with a life-threatening staph infection. He was hours away from going septic, a condition that, untreated, could have shut down his organs. Filming was halted. Hanks recovered, but he later admitted it was the closest he'd ever come to dying for a role. And that, perhaps, is the cruelest irony of all. Sometimes, the quietest films are the deadliest behind the curtain. Bonus fact: Roar, 1981, the most dangerous film ever made. This one didn't make the top 15, but it might just be the strangest of all. Roar wasn't just an action movie. It was an uncontrolled wildlife experiment disguised as cinema. The pitch: a family lives among dozens of real lions, tigers, and leopards, without cages, without stuntmen, and without CGI. Director Noel Marshall wanted authenticity, so he cast himself, his wife Tippi Hedren, and their real-life daughter, Melanie Griffith, in a story set on a remote African ranch. What followed was chaos. Over 70 cast and crew members were injured during the shoot. Marshall was mauled multiple times, requiring 200 stitches. Hedren suffered a fractured leg and scalp wounds. Griffith was clawed across the face and nearly lost an eye, requiring plastic surgery. Cinematographer Jan de Bont had his scalp ripped open and needed over 100 stitches. And yet, they kept filming. Roar took 11 years to complete and bankrupted its creators. It bombed at the box office. But decades later, it lives on as a terrifying relic of unfiltered madness, where the line between performance and survival disappeared completely. No one died, but everyone bled. And to this day, no Hollywood production has ever dared to try something so reckless again. Because Roar wasn't a film set. It was a death trap masquerading as art. Which moment left you stunned? The punch that stopped a heart, the leap that broke bones, or the cut that nearly turned septic? Are these acts of bravery or madness disguised as dedication? Tell us, where do you draw the line between realism and recklessness? And which scene do you now see in a completely different light? The camera never flinched, but maybe it should have.